scans on their home network, some in the practice labs. For the paper that you plan on turning in for the performance assessment, we're going to come actually to the performance assessment here in task 1 and hit view task. All right. That's going to bring up this task overview. At the bottom of this task overview, there's a performance assessment lab link that takes us to the virtual environment that's going to host the networks that we're going to be performing the scans in for Wireshark and Nmap. This is the only place that we're going to be performing the scanning for the performance assessment lab. All right. So we're going to click the performance assessment lab, and that's going to take us to the virtual environment that hosts the VM for Nmap and for Wireshark. Takes about a minute to load. So it's not your home network, it's not your work network, it's not anything in the practice labs. It's this performance assessment lab link only. There's some questions about that, so we want to get that cleared up. All right. Wait for this to build. Back to the overview of the task. All right, here at home screen, we have to log in. We're going to log in with the credentials over here. So the username is root, and the password is a capital P A S S W, the number 0, RD exclamation point. That gets us into the homepage of the virtual environment for the performance assessment once again. All right. First part we're going to do is Nmap. We're going to click on this terminal emulator. All right. It says that in the instructions here. All right. This little box is a terminal emulator. We're going to run a root terminal emulator. It brings up this command line. All right. If you guys are proficient in Zenmap, Nmap, you can run everything from the command line. For the rest of us, we're going to type in Zenmap at the command line, and that's going to bring up this graphical user interface, better known as a GUI. All right. And this hosts the target IP address. This is the network we're going to be scanning. It's the only one you can choose from, so there's no confusion. If you're not scanning this network, you're doing something wrong. It's /24 network, all right? We're going to choose this. It's the only one we can choose from. We're going to choose a quick scan plus. That gives us a lot of information in a relatively, quick manner. That sets all the flags and arguments right here that we're going to need to scan the network. All right. We're going to hit scan, and our scan is off and running. All right. So just going to toggle back and forth while we're telling it to do this type of scan against this network. Shouldn't take that long, usually about less than a minute. Really depends on what's going on in the virtual environment, but it shouldn't be that long. All right. You'll see some host details information pop up over here once the scan is complete, and this will stop. So in the meantime, we'll just wait. All right, scan is complete. And now we can start looking at information. So let's go over what we're looking at, right? So Nmap is a vulnerability scan. We're looking at vulnerabilities, right? High-level vulnerabilities, anything that could cause a potential issue to our network, right? So we'll get into it, outdated OSs, protocols that run the clear, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so let's go back to the requirements, and it says, describe the network topology you found when running Nmap. Include screenshots, plural, as evidence of running Nmap. So you can use any 2 screenshots, but make sure you use at least 2. All right. So it says we have to describe the topology, right? So go to this topology tab. It'll bring up this. I'm going to just expand this box out. Click on this. It'll kind of reorient itself. All right. And we have what seems to be a star topology. All right. So you can write that in your paper. We got what seems to be a star topology, and then we have to describe each host in the network, right? How are some of the ways that we describe each host? IP address, number of open ports, the type of operating system is running, et cetera, et cetera. So when we go to host details, we can look at those details on each host. All right. Just tabbing through the different things here on Nmap. All right, we looked at topology first. Now we can go into host details. Every host for each and every last one of these, you need to have a minimum of the IP address, as an example, number of open ports, and the type of operating system. So for 10.168.27.1, it'll be no open ports and no identifiable operating system, which is fine because it's not giving you one. If it did, it would have the information down here. We got to do that for each and every last one of these hosts. So here's another example. 10.168.27.10 has 8 open ports and appears to be running Windows Server 2012 or 2012 R2 for each and every last one of these. And all you gotta do is click on them, make sure you're in host details, click on each host. It gives you all the information you need to properly describe the topology. And that's the requirements for A. A couple screenshots as your evidence of the Nmap output, describe the topology. All right. B says summarize vulnerabilities on the network and their potential implications based on your Nmap results. Right. So we're going to go back to the Nmap output. All right. And we can just look at this thing. All right. What are we looking at? Protocols that run in the clear. All right. We can look at some of the services on here. We can see, you know, FTP. It doesn't inherently have any security, HTTP. Or we could talk about that. Talk about the implication, right? I like to go to my CVE over here, cve.maya.org, all right? Because if we don't know something, we can search the CVE list and see if it has any vulnerabilities associated with it. Scroll down through here. All right, Windows Server 2012 is an outdated operating system, haven't been supported by Microsoft in a while. All right, this is a perfect example right here, OpenSSH 5.5PL. Some people may not know what that is, but we can do a search right here in our database, right? OpenSSH 5.5PL. And we can see that it has some vulnerabilities associated with it. Pick one of these vulnerabilities, talk about the implication of that vulnerability, what bad thing can happen if that goes unremediated on the network. All right, that seems like some good stuff right there, number one. All right, so vulnerability implication, how many do we need to find? 3 in this section, all right? I always suggest to my students find 3. We talked about 2 or 3 already, all right? One machine appears to be under Windows 7. That's an end user operating system that haven't been supported by Microsoft in a while. All right, just go down through here. All right, looking at each and every line. It may or may not be apparent to you, right? Linux kernel 2.6.32. Maybe we know what that is, maybe we don't. We can always do some research, right? Linux 2.6.32. It has some vulnerabilities associated with it. Look at that. And we can do that for IP addresses, services, protocols, etc., etc. Just showing you guys how to get to finding vulnerability that could exist on the network based on the vulnerability scan that we ran. All right. So there's plenty of stuff for you guys to pick out, talk about the vulnerability, talk about the implication. And we've covered A and B. Before we move on to Wireshark, which is section C, do we have any questions? I can't see the chat, so if you guys have any questions, come off mute, please, before we move on. Going once, going twice. All right. Section C requires us to go into Wireshark. All right. To do that, we have some pre-populated packet capture files in this packet capture files folder. PCAPS is the abbreviation for that. All right. When we bring this up, we have 4 different files to choose from. We can choose any file. We don't have to choose all. We don't have to choose 2 or 3. We can choose any one. I highly recommend choosing number 1. It has a ton of stuff in here. What's going on? All right. And I kind of like to look at this from a protocol list view. You don't have to necessarily. If you click protocol, it'll kind of put these in alphabetical order, and we'll just start looking through these, all right? Now, we're looking more at a SOC level, all right? What's going on behind the scenes, right? This is a packet. We're doing packet capture analysis, right? We're looking at packets. So we're looking at this info that's associated with the IP address and protocol. So we're getting a little bit deeper, right? We're not deep down into the weeds. We're not SOC level 3, right? Maybe think of like a SOC level 1, 10,000 foot view. Hey, what's going on with this particular IP address, protocol, and what's the information behind it, right? So we would just start looking. And also an easier way to look at this too, so if we don't know something about all of these things, right? I'm just hitting down arrow on my keyboard. You can do some research, right? This may not be inherently clear to you off the top of your head what's going on with DHCP version 6. But again, we can go to our trusty CVE database, type that in, right? And see if it has any vulnerabilities associated with it. All right. Here in Wireshark, it says take a capture of the range of packets you're talking about. So if you pick this DHCP one, you don't got to pick every instance of DHCP version 6 in this packet capture file, just enough here to here. So, maybe from here to here, so you have a graphical representation of the issue you're talking about. So the evaluators can match what you're talking about with, the picture, the screenshot, the graphical representation. All right, so that's what it's talking about. So you have to talk about the vulnerability anomaly, it says. I think that the word anomaly is a little bit poorly phrased for what anomaly really is in the packet capture analysis. Hey, I didn't get to write it, so I just get to help you students make heads or tails. You start looking for a complex anomaly in the packet capture file, and sometimes students go down a rabbit hole and not being able to properly explain what's going on here. So I'm going to say vulnerability. You can say anomaly if you want. The task says anomaly. However you slice it, anomaly, take a packet, a screenshot of a range of packets, all right, and then give the implication. Implication again, what bad thing can happen if this goes unremediated on the network? Again, my suggestion is to find at least 3, all right, and this has a ton of stuff that we can talk about. I'm just hitting down. It's a ton of DHCP v6 packets going on, all right. DNS, same thing, all right. So let's look at it, all right. How many do we need to find? Again, 3. That's my suggestion. Some people find more, some people find less. So here's a perfect example of the difference between the first section and the second section, right? In Nmap, we can just say FTP is an unsecured protocol, yada, yada. And in packet capture, all right, on the Nmap side, we need to kind of get more of why. Why is this an issue on our network? Or here, some person's username and password is freely displayed over the network, and that's clearly a bad thing. All right, so explain that out if you choose FTP. All right, the implication of that, and then we'll get down to how to remediate it in a second. All right. Same thing with HTTP. If you pick that, just going down here, hitting down, showing you guys easy ways to find. All right. Now, you guys can do some research. There's one machine that's pinging 2 machines on our network with ICMP requests, and it's coming back at destination ultra unreachable. All right. Do some research on what that may mean. You can find out some good stuff if you don't clearly know what that is from just looking at it. All right. ICMP v6. All right. You may or may not know what this information is, but are there any vulnerabilities associated with this particular protocol? Again, go into our CVE tool, hit the search button. All right. What was this? IGMP version 3. All right. And this is a very interesting CVE that allows remote attackers to cause denial of service in your network if it's exploited. If you pick which one, make sure you take a snippet of the range of packets associated with that issue. So we got the issue, talk about the implication of that issue, and also your range of packets as your graphical representation of what you're talking about. And you can do that as you go down through any of these. You can do some research if you don't know clearly what's going on with it. Again, we have a CVE database that helps you students out, not only in this task, but this is what we really do in the real world when we're trying to find out are there issues associated with it. All right. CVE.mighty.org is not the only database. It's a really good one that we could kind of start to see what associated issues are with things running on our network. All right. So that covers C, that covers D. Now here in E, all the solutions, all the issues that we found while we did our Nmap scan, our packet traffic analysis in Wireshark, now we have to recommend a solution for minimizing or eliminating all identified vulnerabilities or anomalies from Wireshark and Nmap. Use currently industry respected reliable resources and sources to support your recommendation. All right. Also, if you look at F, you have to use in-text citation. All right. That's going to correlate to a work on your reference page. All right. Here in the CVE database, if you start looking at these, sometimes these links take you to a remediation. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you may have to go above and beyond the next step and then go to Google Scholar or hell, Microsoft or MITRE or SANS, and you may have to find the recommended solution outside of what may be here in the database, and that's totally good. That's totally fine. That's what we do in the industry all the time. Some of these may take you to a recommended fixed action or a recommended solution. Some of them may not. I can't speak to each and every last one of them, and I don't know what particular CVE you guys may pick. But if it's not here, you can just do a search, Google Scholar, remediate denial of service attack, and then it'll take you to that recommended solution. Just remember to put that in-text citation. I don't know why students forget the in-text citation. So at the end of your recommended solution is going to be where you got it from, that website, that page, the author of that book, Jones 2018, and that's going to correlate to a work on your reference page. That is a hard and fast requirement, all right? Students will always ask, well, I've been working in industry for 20 years. I don't need to look up how to remediate a simple FTP vulnerability. But that's the requirement of an academic course here at the university. It's a requirement, and we can't get around it. I hope that's clear because that gets dinged a lot in evaluations. I find that some students don't really realize that the course instructors here don't evaluate the papers. They go into an evaluations queue, and that's a whole separate department. So some students may be aware of that, and some students may not. But it's not the CIs that do the evaluation of the performance assessments. All right, we already talked about sources using in-text citations and references for any content quoted, paraphrased, or summarized. Sentence, punctuation, flow, grammar, a well-written paper that reads well, flows well. It's how we demonstrate our professional communication here in G. I think a Word document works best for this type of performance assessment, but you can use any of these allowed file types. I've seen PDFs, I've seen PowerPoints. These are all the allowed file types as per the requirement. So, and again, sometimes the students will get templates from the instructor. Sometimes students will fit into these cohorts where we help you meet the competencies of the rubric, right? Everything that we do is helping you meet the competencies of the rubric. You don't meet the competencies of the template or the competencies of the cohort. You must meet the competencies of the rubric, which is over here to the far right in green. As long as you do that, everything will be good to go. And that is task 1. Before I get out of the lab environment, does anybody have any questions? Please come off mute because I can't see the chat.
Would you say a good focus is to focus on the protocol and not actually what's happening with the packets, if that makes sense?
No, I mean, you can do it either way. Some students look at the packets and say, hey, I can see an issue here. Some students don't have that level of expertise. So I say a good way if you're net new to this is to look at those protocols, see what's going on with them, And if you're totally not sure, you can do some research in the CVE database.
When we screenshot, do we have to include that third screen there at the bottom of the Wireshark file?
No, just arrange the packets.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen.